Sudarshanam Nama Bhagavatam Dayatanastram Tejasadurvishaham Muhu Parivartamanam Abhyavasito Muhurtam Vadvijamanas Chakita Pradaya Arat Eva Nivartate Tad Uparagam Iti Vadanti Lokaha. Translation: after hearing from the sun and moon demigods about Rahu's attack, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu engages this known as Sudarshan Chakra to protect them. The Sudarshan Chakra is the Lord's most beloved devotee and is favored by the Lord. The intense heat of its effulgence meant for killing non-Vaishnavas unbearable to Rahu, and he therefore flees in fear of it. During the time Rahu disturbs the sun and moon, there occurs what people commonly know as an eclipse. Purport: the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is always the protector of his devotees, who are also known as demigods. The controlling demigods are most obedient to Lord Vishnu, although they want some material sense enjoyment, and that is why they are called demigods, or almost godly. Although Rahu attempts to attack both the sun and moon, they are protected by Lord Vishnu. Being very afraid of Lord Vishnu's chakra, Rahu cannot stay in front of the sun or moon for more than a muhurta of 48 minutes. The phenomena that occurs when Rahu blocks the light of the sun or moon is called an eclipse. The attempt of the scientists on Earth to go to the moon, as demoniac as Rahu's attack, their attempts will be failures, because no one can enter the moon or the sun so easily like the attack of Rahu. Such attempts will certainly be failures. So this verse is explaining how Rahu attacks the sun and the moon by obscuring their light. And of course, in modern terms, when the moon comes in front of the sun, then we get eclipse of the sun, and when the shadow of the earth hits the moon, we get an eclipse of the moon. So these are described as the attack of Rahu, trying to devour the sun and the moon. But we see it's in terms of just the planets themselves and their positioning. So actually, from a technical point of view, Rahu is not a planet as we conceive of planet. Rather, it's a point in the sky. It's not a real substantial planet. It's sometimes called a shadow planet. Yeah. But these particular points, astronomical points, are such when they line up with the sun and the moon. Then we have the sun, moon, and the earth in one particular line, and this creates what we call the eclipse. So of course that for the earth, people on earth, such events are considered inauspicious because it's not the natural position of the sun and moon. They're supposed to be shining in the day and the night, and then we have an obstruction, an irregular obstruction. So this is considered to be very inauspicious from the Vedic point of view. And also from not only the Vedic point of view, from the point of view of civilizations in general. And this is one of the reasons why they developed astronomy so they could predict when such events would occur. And of course, these events portend misfortune or whatever, so people want to prepare for that. So therefore we have the development of astronomy, etc., and also mathematics to make these predictions about the sun and the moon. But it's not just the sun and the moon, actually, it's all the planets. They are objects of curiosity for ancient societies. And thus, they observed Venus and Mercury and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, etc. And this way we get a full development of astronomy, predicting all the different planetary movements in the sky. So this was also important or significant for ancient peoples, and out of this we get astrology. The planets in certain positions give good luck, and certain positions give bad luck or misfortune. So, in this way, we get the development of astrology as a predictive tool, etc. So, the same thing we see in the Bhagavatam. All the planets are described, and their movements are described. Of course, not in detail as we get in astronomical texts, but we do get mention of all the planets and their orbits, their distance above the Earth, and their general, let's say, sign, what they symbolize or what they indicate. And all this, of course, is a reflection of this interest in the planets, because in certain positions they give good results and bad results. So the whole description of Mount Meru and the Dvipas and the planets, etc., are there to explain some of the phenomena we see on a daily basis. Every day we see the sun rises and the sun sets, the moon rises, the moon sets. Each day it happens. Somehow or other, the moon keeps rising every night, the sun keeps rising every day. So then they have explanations for that in terms of how everything is revolving around Mount Meru. And then we have the seasons, why we have some seasons in which which are hot and cold, and why we see as the seasons progress throughout the year, the sun gets higher and higher in the sky at noontime, etc. And then at a certain point it stops and it starts going down again. So we get the Dakshina and Uttarayana phases of the sun. So all these need some sort of explanation, and we see there's some explanation here in the Bhagavatam also about that, why the sun keeps rising up higher and higher in the sky until it reaches its highest point in the summertime, and then starts going down every day. So it needs some sort of explanation. So we have explanation in the Srimad Bhagavatam of this phenomena. And so in this way we have an arrangement of the planets described in relation to a central axis with Mount Meru. And above that we have the Dhruva pole star. So everything is revolving around that particular axis. So it's not exactly a Earth-centered explanation, because where we are is slightly off from the center. We're in Varsha, which is not in the center. It's on the side of Jambudvip, and in the middle of Jambudvip we have Mount Meru, and that's where everything is. So we're not actually, it's not a geocentric explanation of the movements of the universe, like ancient, I think, Greeks. Theirs was a geocentric. We're exactly in the middle. Everything is going around like this. And so in our model, this model here, it's not us, it's Mount Meru's in the middle. We're kind of off to the side here, a little bit off center. But it's kind of related to a geocentric vision of the universe. As I mentioned the other day, this concept was given up when the Europeans developed scientific theory and used telescopes and things like that about 300 years ago or so, maybe 300 or 400 years ago. There was the Renaissance and development of science, etc. And then they rejected the Greek ideas, which they previously accepted, which is also carried on by the Christian church. They had the same theories. But then there was the scientists began to revolt and say, no, this isn't true because we observed something else with our eyes. And this created a big controversy, and many of the scientists got killed or put in prison or whatever because of their ideas that Earth is not the center. And so the new theory is sun is in the center, Earth is going around, and Earth is revolving like this, and it looks like planets are revolving around the Earth, but it's only because Earth is rotating. So this was a very, very revolutionary theory, and it went against, of course, the Greeks and against the same theory that the Christian church supported. So therefore, the church got angry and began persecuting all the scientists and saying, you're all heretics. Some of them got burned at the stake. Some got put in prison. So in this way, there was a big war between the church and the scientific researchers or whatever. And this went on for some time. But eventually, the church lost, and science won. And then after that, science became stronger and stronger until we get up to the present day, where nobody listens to the church for scientific theories about the earth and whatever. And so similarly we'll find with the Vedic version of things, again, somewhat like the Greek version. And then in the modern world, everyone looks at this, oh, this is all wrong. Science says this, this, and this, and this, and whatever, so how can we believe in this? Flat earth theory and everything revolving around the earth, whatever like that. So consequently, these descriptions we find in Bhagavatam and other Puranas are rejected as being imaginary. So in this way we get a conflict between the traditional scriptures and scientific observation of the modern world. And most people, of course, go with the scientific description as being more realistic and practical. And then consequently, the ancient vision of Earth and the planets gets rejected as being mythology or due to lack of knowledge or foolishness or whatever. But we are taught that the scriptures are perfect, the scriptures have a vision of things, and we can't reject it, and we can't just interpret it as being imaginary or old-fashioned or whatever. So this is where our problem comes in accepting the 5th canto of Bhagavatam. Some people are very attached to their upbringing in modern science, and they look at this, and this is all imaginary. And it's very difficult to, believe in such things. But if we look at ancient times, in ancient times, like 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, we shouldn't think that these people were brainless. We have many great intelligent people. We have great mathematicians, etc., in India, who had nice theories about spherical Earth revolving, etc., and whatever, and theory of eclipses, very similar to modern theory, whatever. Aryabhata himself did all this. He made calculations, etc. But he was also a believer in scriptures. So he believed in these descriptions of this as well. So he had two visions, one based upon observation in the sky, and one according to the scripture. And for him it was not contradictory. For us it is contradictory, for him it was not. So why is that? He had two different visions, and he didn't find them contradictory, just different. So he accepted this description here with Mount Meru in it, and he also was able to observe the sky and make calculations and come up with his own theories about how things were operating in the solar system, whatever. So, the point is that we are brought up in a certain culture where we accept science and we reject everything that contradicts it. In ancient times, that was not so. You could observe things in the world, and you could also go by scripture, and it may look contradictory from our modern point of view, but for the ancient, it was not contradictory. And so we have to ask, why? Why they find no contradiction when we find contradiction? And the answer will be that their minds operated differently than ours, and they could appreciate both visions. We cannot. We can only appreciate one vision, the modern scientific version of everything. So that's why we had come up with this idea that the Bhagavatam is contrary to science or whatever. So, thinking of it another way, we can say that the ancient scientists were also spiritualists, and they had a spiritual vision as well as a material vision. And they understood that spiritual vision may look contradictory to material vision, but it's not. We're looking at the same object in different ways, that's all. So, therefore, when they look at the earth from a spiritual point of view, they see one thing, or not even spiritual, we could say higher material perspective. They see something different. Just as the Devatas or Lord Brahma, when they look at us on earth, will see us differently than we perceive ourselves. Obviously, the time span of Brahma's life is also quite different, and his perspective is quite different. The Devatas in their heavenly planets have different consciousness and different senses than ours. They have material senses, of course, and material bodies, but quite different from ours. Their intelligence is much finer, and therefore the perception of the earth and the human beings is much different from our perceptions. So in this way, throughout the universe, we're going to have different conceptions also. So now in this chapter, we discuss the lower planetary systems, where their minds are completely tamasic, whatever. But their vision of things is quite different. We see one topic of the Bhagavatam is called uti. This means the impulses of different people in the universe. So there are actually two impulses, the demonic and the daivic. Those who are devas have one vision of what the world is and what the goal is. Those who are demonic have another vision of what the world is and what the goal is. And consequently, they fight. So we see there's always a constant war between the Devatas and the demons. Sometimes the demons attack the upper planets and kick out the Devatas, and then the Devatas get the planets back and push the demons down below the earth and whatever. So there's a constant struggle between different entities of the universe based upon their different visions of the world. The visions of reality itself are quite different. In this way, within the material world itself, not what to speak of spiritual world, in the material world itself, completely different visions of what things are and what the goal of life is, and consequently their idea of what is the world and the structure are also quite different. So that has to be accepted in reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. Not only in this particular case, but we'll see that Bhagavatam speaks of many things in an absolute way, and at the same time it may reject them. So we have Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda, part of the Vedas. They are praised because they're part of the Vedas, and they have a particular use for certain types of people, and therefore it's praised as if absolute.
And then in another section of the Vedas, it is absolutely condemned as being foolish. So Krishna himself rejects karma yoga in 9th chapter and 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. At the same time, he praises it in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So how can both things be correct? So it is according to different people, things are good. So for people who are materialistic, karma yoga is praised, is good for them, is beneficial for them. From the spiritual point of view, of course, no, it's not good. It keeps you bound up in the material world. So then it gets condemned. So we'll find different viewpoints expressed in the Vedic literature itself. And, we can't just isolate one section and say this is it, because we have other sections that look contradictory. So which is the correct one? So we have to be very careful. And then when we read the scripture, we take a broader perspective of everything when we read it. And this can help solve some of the contradictions that we see within what look like contradictions in the literature itself, such as Srimad Bhagavatam, where it rejects karma yoga as being foolish or whatever. Other times it praises it. So in this way we should read things very carefully. So that's also applicable here. It becomes a little more, we say, explicit here, because we are conditioned to look at the modern world in a particular way, but when we see this, it's completely opposite. If we take people 500 years ago, they read this, it is not contradictory, because they didn't know anything about modern science then. But then when we start getting Western ideas, etc., like 400 years ago, 300 years ago, and then we start reading them because it's a little puzzling. When we get to the modern world, it's completely ridiculous, and we have to say this is rejectable. We can't accept this at all. And it's because of our way we think, that's all. Therefore, we do have to appreciate the scripture and the statements of inscriptions in the Bhagavatam, but from a different point of view. We may not be able to understand it, but nevertheless it is there. Just as, not even spiritually speaking, this is material again, but if we observe with left side of our brain, we'll see things in one way. If we can perceive with our right brain, we'll see something completely different. If we look with our left brain, which is the logical side, then we can analyze things scientifically. If we look with our right brain, we don't consider science at all. We see something completely different. We see the world as one whole organic moving entity or something like that. So that's the kind of the spiritual side of our brain. Unfortunately, we do cultivate the left brain in the modern world with a lot of learning and whatever, which is left brain activity, and therefore we see the whole world in that way. But if you switch to the right brain, and then we just read Bhagavatam, oh, yeah, that's very nice. We'll accept it. It's a different conception of the whole world. So the right brain is very acceptable, it sees things in different ways. So therefore we should understand the Bhagavatam with a mature vision and not simply from a limited material perception. At the same time, then, we should not be blind, or we have what we call blind faith. This is one reason why people in the modern world may reject religion, because we end up with things like the Christians burning the scientists at the stake because they had certain ideas that were contrary to their ideas or whatever. So we see in ancient India, it wasn't so. The scientists could say, okay, the earth is spinning around like this, and it's spinning around, it's going around the sun. They didn't burn him at the stake. He was a great scientist, and they honored him. And he also honored the Vedas. People were, different. They could accept contrary ideas and understand that they're speaking out with different vision on different levels. So, as devotees, we often tend to polarize things and reject the scientific and the purely logical. And that's for good reason, because Scripture itself says logic is limited, and we can't understand Scripture using logic. But then our acharyas also say that logic is there and it is useful. We can use it also, and we must use it. To get the meaning of Scripture, we have to use logic. And so there's a whole system developed on how to get the correct meaning of Scripture by using certain rules established by logic. In this way, Scripture itself needs some intelligence in order to get the real meaning. If we have two contrary statements, we have to somehow logically explain why they're contradictory. So we don't reject logic completely, but it is not independent, and it is not beyond or above the Scripture. So we take the two in combination, and we can use Scripture or use logic when we look at Scripture, etc., as long as we don't let it dominate our interpretations and whatever, and just start discarding things without proper understanding. So, therefore, we don't reject the logical process, but we put it in its proper place. It does have practical applications, and so we see that in ancient times, though we can say that people in ancient India were very religious and followed the Scriptures a lot, and they based everything on Scripture, the people also were free to investigate, experiment, observe, invent many things using logical abilities. And therefore we have highly developed science in ancient India, highly developed agriculture, highly developed linguistics, highly developed design, etc., engineering, etc., all based on logic. So logic was never rejected, but it had its place in the material world on the practical level. So, therefore, the devotee should also use logic, but put it in its proper place. It should follow after the Scripture. And that is exactly what the ancient sages did. They used logic, but it had its place within the broader view of Scripture itself. Okay, any question there?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class. Maharaj, yesterday you mentioned about Lord Brahma and how the Lord himself takes the role of Lord Brahma when there's nobody else suitable to take the role. And Lord Brahma is also a living entity under the influence of, I'm assuming, the three modes of material nature. And he's a living entity in Jivatma. So how does the Lord appear and disappear? When he takes the role of Lord Brahma, does he appear and disappear like a living entity, normal living entity, or does he appear and disappear like the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Well, how does Krishna appear and disappear? It looks like he's an ordinary living entity. He appears and looks like he's born. He gets shot in the foot by an arrow, looks like he disappears like a mortal. So that's Krishna. Of course, he appears like a, on the other hand, Rama is a little more spectacular. He doesn't disappear in the same way. He goes up in a chariot, I think, so quite spectacular. So the Lord can appear and disappear in various ways, which may be either look mundane or be very, very spiritual or essence. If he comes out of a pillar as Nrsimhadev comes out of the mouth of, or the nostril of Brahma as Varaha, etc. So he appears in different ways, whatever like that. So that's very variable. So similarly, if he appears as Brahma, then he can appear however he wants, from the navel of Vishnu, whatever, if he wants to, could appear another way. We see in the Brahma Samhita that it describes Shiva. So normally we in Bhagavatam, Shiva comes out of the forehead of Brahma. Yeah? But then here I think Brahma Samhita comes out of the left side of his body or something like that. So then Jiva Goswami comments. So yeah, in different kalpas, on different universes, and different lifetimes of the Brahmas, etc., things happen slightly different sometimes. So Brahma or Shiva are going to appear in different ways at different times. Yeah.
Thanks for the class. Just a simple question. The Vishnu devotee means when you worship Vishnu, you call a devotee, yourself a devotee. But when you worship Shiva, is it also devotee level or what you call them different name?
How do we worship Shiva?
Yeah.
Well, for us, yeah, of course Vishnu is Supreme Lord, and then we say, well, you shouldn't confuse Shiva and Vishnu and say they're the same. So, but we do make a little distinction. At the same time, our acharyas say that in general, Shiva is just another form of Vishnu, so we can't really say he is different, but he manifests less qualities than Vishnu form, 5 qualities less, so therefore we cannot say it's exactly the same. So, in this way, he is a devotee of the Lord, because he is showing less powers, just as Vishnu himself is a devotee of Krishna. At the same time, he is a Supreme Lord himself in one form. So, we respect him in all cases, and we have to distinguish him from the other devatas because he is a form of Vishnu. At the same time, he is also less than Vishnu, so therefore we take him as the servant of Vishnu at the same time. And there's nothing wrong with that, because even we take the Supreme Lord himself as Vishnu form, as servant of Krishna. So we worship Advaitacharya as he's Mahavishnu, so he's a servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, even though he is Supreme Lord. So nothing wrong with even taking the Supreme Lord as servant in certain cases. So that's also the case with Shiva. He's subordinate to Bhagavan and Vishnu form, so therefore we take him as the servant.
So like those Shiva Bhaktas in the material world,
Yeah.
so they are committing offense, but they are not aware that they are not considering Vishnu to be the topmost.
Yeah.
So they are committing offense in their bhakti, or?
Yes. So if we take Shiva as the highest form, independent of everyone else, then this goes against scripture, and it becomes an aparad to Vishnu. So therefore, then that is wrong.
Even if they are Shiva, ignorant about Vishnu,
Huh?
they are Shiva Bhaktas, they
Yeah.
never heard of Vishnu.
Yeah. 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 So we do have, for instance, we have Hanuman Bhaktas. But they're worshipping Hanuman not as supreme, but as the servant of Rama. So nothing wrong with that. But if we worship Shiva, and nothing wrong with that, but we take him as supreme and Vishnu secondary, then that becomes offensive. So they should serve it the proper way. We do have one sampradaya, the Rudra sampradaya, which is a Vaishnava sampradaya, and that's approved. And Shiva is the head of the sampradaya who gives knowledge, etc. So we have no problem with accepting Shiva, but we see his proper place.
Same way as the Lakshmi Sampradaya, they also do that. Other forms of
Yeah.
folk Kumara, so they,
Yeah.
but they do it with the concept that Vishnu is the topmost.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then it's all.
In all cases, yeah.
There are around the world there are structures and monuments and architecture that modern day scientists cannot even figure out how it's done or do it. And then through the Vedas we understand that there is interplanetary travel. So it's a mystery how some of these amazing structures are actually built. And how they move straight around.
Structures like?
Yeah, she's saying that there's some structures in this world where the scientists cannot explain how the structures were
Oh,
built.
okay, yeah.
And then from our readers, we know that there's interplanetary travel.
Okay,
So-
okay, so good. Yeah, of course we have structures like the pyramids or whatever, or Baalbek with this huge piece of stone that no one can lift. And what are they going to do with this stone when they can't even lift it? And we have many mysterious things there. And of course then there's various theories about that. What is extraterrestrials come down and do all these things in ancient times, or another theory is that related to that maybe that were ancient cultures before our cultures and before 5,000 years ago, maybe 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, there were cultures also, and these are the remnants of those cultures, and they were more advanced than we are, so therefore they could do more fantastic things. This, of course, is in line with Bhagavatam itself. It says that we go through yuga cycles, and we have, 4 million years ago, we have, Satya Yuga, more advanced than us, and they could do many more things and have many more powers, greater science, greater knowledge, materially and spiritually. And then when we come to Kali Yuga, which is like 4 million years later, then we end up with, what we call science, but that's a very, a reflection of what was previously there. So that doesn't really contradict us when we say that. But of course there is the modern, archaeological theory, which will reject all of this and say it's all nonsense, and this is just, somehow or other the ancients could do this, 5,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, whatever, with whatever tools they had. So, and of course there are explanations on how they built Stonehenge or the pyramids, using their particular instruments, but there are, we could say, problems, because how they cut the stones so precisely is a little bit difficult to understand when they didn't have advanced tools. They had maybe copper at the most, which bends very easily, and they would leave scratch marks all over the stones or whatever. So they did seem to have some advanced cutting techniques that wasn't just copper and stones and chipping away with chisels. It was something else also. We don't know from modern perspective like that. But as I said, from Bhagavad perspective, no, it doesn't. It's pretty sensible, because we do have previous things going back, not only 4 million years, but from the beginning of the day of Brahma, which is many millions of years previously, whatever. So it doesn't contradict what we say.
There's a question online. What acts does one have to commit to enter the subterranean heavenly planets? Materially, it sounds like they enjoy pleasure greater than the heavenly planets, which implies good karma, but they exist in tamagun, complete forgetfulness of the Lord, which sounds like bad karma.
Well, the ignorance of the Lord is not actually bad karma. Ignorance is ignorance, and then we can be in tamagun, whatever, and it depends. Usually people are a mixture. They may be tamagun, but they don't commit so many sinful activities. Nevertheless, they're tamagun and they have a great desire for enjoyment, so they can go to those places. If they are tamagun, very tamagun oriented, plus they're very violent, they wouldn't even be on those planets, they'll be animals or plants. So there's so many opportunities within each guna. Sattva guna also, you can be sattva guna on earth and be a brahmana, you can be an upper planet on Svargaloka, or you could be up to Brahmaloka even. You got all these different stages above. And you could be on earth also, which is generally more rajasic, and you could be sattvic also. So there's a variety of sattvagun people. Similarly, there's a variety of rajagun people. We have even the different dvipas, all on the earth level of Rajagun, and all, different peoples, and we have different varshas also with people. And then we have lower planetary systems, largely tamagun, etc. So, therefore, you can be tamagunish, but you can have mixtures within there, and then your karmas may be various also. Some may be very sinful, some may be less sinful. So just like we have sudras in the varnashram system. They're tamagun, but they're not sinful because they're following varnashram system, so they get rewarded for that. So therefore, there's various combinations of tamagun, which will put us in various places.
There's another question. As a devotee, we feel we would love to accept this cosmology according to the Bhagavatam, but it would be nice to have some empirical evidence that we can refer to that gives us some faith to accept this, or even for the purpose of presenting this for preaching purposes. Could you share any evidence, please?
Well, empirical evidence would mean what? Because if a sage comes back, Narada Muni comes down and says, okay, I testify that what Bhagavad of the vision of the universe is correct. There's Mount Meru in the middle, there's Dvipas, and there's higher planets, there's lower planets. He says, I saw it. We won't accept that testimony, according to, scientists won't accept it. We'll accept it, scientists won't accept it. So if a great sage or a great yogi says the same thing in the modern world, comes down from the Himalayas and say, no, Bhagavatam is correct, I've seen it like this, they're not going to accept also. So what type of, concrete proof do we need? What I said is you can't really prove it concretely because our instruments and our vision of reality is limited in a certain way. We see in 3 dimensions, so somebody sees in 5 dimensions, he sees something completely different. But we won't accept it because we don't see that way, we see this way. So, therefore it's quite difficult to get concrete proof of it. Like take a photograph of the moon or something, say this is look, there's a Mount Meru here or whatever. We're not going to see that. All that can be done is to, see that there is, or appreciate that there are certain concepts here that are presented within this model of the universe in the Bhagavatam, which to some extent may agree with certain scientific principles, like electromagnetic fields or something like that, where which you cannot see also, but maybe we can detect a little bit. So we have electromagnetic fields and whatever. Similarly, we have our subtle body, which is also maybe electromagnetic also, but so subtle we can't even detect it. Maybe they will in the future have an instrument to detect very subtle, which is now invisible to us, fields of electromagnetism or other energies or whatever around the body, whatever, and maybe in the whole world. And then we'll see another world. We'll get another vision of the world, just as some people who are not even yogis, they can see your subtle body, they can see your chakras, because their vision has become a little bit, more sensitive. So maybe those persons also can look at the world, go up in a special vehicle, and they can see the world and see something completely different from us. But then who's going to accept it? The scientist will not accept it because he doesn't have that vision. So there's a problem there between, what we want as proof.
He also asks, we always hear how the planets, their position in some specific, have some specific effect on us, like on our karma. Can you explain what is the direct correlation between us and the planets, and why do they have some large imposition on our life?
Oh. Well, planets, not according to science, but according to the Vedas, are ruled by certain devatas. And the devatas are in charge of certain things within this world, like the elements and the senses, etc. So for each of our senses we have a devata. For material elements we have devatas. And the devatas are acting according to certain laws. Our bodies are produced according to karma. And this is also a law. And the devatas are there to enforce the law. So therefore, in one sense, the devatas make our body and they determine our karma. Of course, we make our karma and they just carry out the law of karma for us. So in this sense, the devatas are kind of, ruling over our senses, and our weaknesses, and our sicknesses, and our accidents, etc. So, in that sense, then, we say there is some control, whatever. Of course, from a modern point of view, they'll say, well, these bodies are so far away, they have very minimal influence in terms of gravity or whatever, scientifically measurable influence on us. The moon, of course the moon is the most obvious one because it does affect water on the earth and tides that affects our body. So therefore, on Ekadasis we fast because the moon is affecting the water of the body or something like that. So there are some measurable effects of the moon, but a planet like Jupiter, which is so far away, how can it have any significant effect? Plus, how can it have effect on individuals in different ways, each one within the, on Earth planet? It sounds rather ridiculous. So the counter argument is, don't think of it in terms of physical influence. Just think of it as the planets act as an indication of our karma. That's all. It's just a way of reading our karma, like you can read a letter or something like that, and open it up, and So you take your planets and you read the planets, and then you can say, well, this is how your karmas are going to operate. So simply indications of your karmas at certain periods of your life. So that's how we can take it. Not that the planets are zapping you in certain ways or something like that, but they're indicating something. And if you want to get rid of your bad karma, then you worship that Devata, planetary Devata.
Is it true that the Earth is the only place one can occur karma in order to then go somewhere else in the universe?
Well, of course, this place is called karma bhumi in one sense, and we earn our karma, but no one in the whole universe is free of karma. Everybody's getting it. But I suppose it's called that because you fall down from the heavenly planets and you plop down onto our Bhumandala at a certain stage. So everyone within the universe is affected by karma. If they didn't have karma, they wouldn't be here. They would be out of the material world. They have liberation, but they don't. So everybody's getting karma and experiencing karma and producing more karma all the time. So nobody's really can be escaped from it.
There's one last question. What other types of beings exist within the middle planetary system?
What type?
What other types of beings exist within the middle planetary system?
So middle is generally Rajasic, lower is Tamasic, upper is Sattvic, like that Devatas above. We have the Rahu is below the Sarga sphere, so it's also very passionate Rajasic, the Antariksha. So the earth basically is this. But then again, we'll see that the other Dvipas are called Boma Svarga. So we have Varsha, on Jambudvipa had the different Varshas, and Varshas on the edge, and then we have the other Varshas like this up at the top, and divided by mountain ranges which we cannot surpass, and these are called Bhomasvarga. So unlike our Varsha, they're also heavenly. So it is said that the Devatas, when they exhaust their punyas, fall down to that area and get a little more enjoyment on the earth level. So, but in general, we say it's Rajasic. The earth level is the Rajasic area for people. People who are very active.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, fine. Okay, Hare Krishna.
As Holiness Bhanu Swami I SB.